Okay, so a very big welcome. This is the last session of the week, it's Friday, and we are doing the final kind of step within the first part of the full awareness of breathing, which is the main sitting meditation that we practice at Empty Meadow. So I will just, as I did yesterday, just super quickly whiz through the whole thing, just to recap what we've talked about this week. So we're talking about mindfulness, what it means to begin practicing, and we made a few acknowledgements. And then we're mainly looking at this schema of how we look at ourselves. Preparation, which is over here, and we haven't really got a block for. We've looked at our body on Tuesday and Wednesday. We looked at feelings yesterday on Thursday, and today we're going to look at mind. So mind, I guess, is the least tangible aspect of self. When I say, where is your mind, where do you point to? Your head. Is there lots of nodding? There's lots of people.
Like physically pointing to my head.
Are you? Yeah.
Suppose I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we say where's our mind, 9 times out of 10, we point to our heads. But if I was to say to you, who's that person over there with a red hat on, and you happen to be wearing a red hat, and you say, who, me? Where would you point to?
Chest.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Did someone answer?
I think chest.
Your chest, yeah. So a lot of people would put their hand on their heart or their chest. So it's an interesting question, isn't it? So, or it's an interesting little experiment. So you, if I say, where are you? You say, here I am. Put your hand on your chest. So me, yeah. I'm here. But where's my mind? Oh, it's up here. It's above my ears. So we could say, well, that's interesting, isn't it? So our mind, which is kind of like the essence of me, we know that anatomically in the West, we think about it being part of body. It's in our brain. But as I've said before, every cadaver has a brain, but they don't really have a mind. Cadaver means dead person. So every corpse, I suppose, has a brain, but no mind. So that's interesting. What is making my mind happen in my brain? So that's a little question. I'm not going to answer it. I'm just going to ask that question and let you have a think about it. And that brings up part one of what our mind is. So our schema describes the mind in 3 stages or 3 parts. And I'm going to refer to them another time in the talk as 3 legs of a stool, like a milking stool. So in order to stand up, you need the 3 legs. And the first leg is thinking. And thinking is the first one because it's the one we're most familiar with, in that some people often believe that their mind is their thinking. And that's not an unreasonable thing to a conclusion to come to, because it feels like it's the active part of mind, and our attention, our mindfulness, our awareness is focused on thinking an awful lot. I would argue most of us spend 90% of our waking awareness looking at thinking, and really this practice is just about sharing it out more evenly, try to balance it out more evenly. So if we were going to put a third in body, a third in feelings, and a third in mind, then within mind, we're only going to put a third in thinking. So that will require a bit of recalibration for a lot of people. And even experienced, I wouldn't call myself experienced practitioner, but I've been practicing a couple of years, and I would say that in my waking day, 80% of my time is spent thinking. So, but I try as much as possible to return to my breathing and to notice that I've gone back to focusing completely on my thinking, and I try to share it out again evenly. And that's really what the sitting meditation practice is kind of formally sharing it out. Okay, so thinking we know about, we know what thinking is. I don't need to really define it much more than that, I hope. The next one is perception. So perception is often forgotten, but it's actually not too difficult to focus on. And what I mean by perception is the manifestation in your mind of a sensory stimulus that came from outside of your brain. So you hear a noise, you see a picture, you feel a touch, you smell a scent. All of these sensory data is hits your sensory organ, is transformed from some other kind of information into electrical information, and it enters your mind and you perceive it. So some people might be saying, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. You're right. Yeah, my perceptions do happen in my mind. They are caused by what's outside, but they happen in my mind. And having kind of made that assumption, you can think, oh, actually, I am familiar with perceptions. I have them all the time, and I know all about perceptions. But how often do you really focus on your perceptions rather than think, what does that mean? What is that all about? That's thinking, that's discrimination. You're analyzing your perceptions. But how long in the day do you actually focus just on your perception? So an example might be in the connect phase when we focus on our hearing. And when I was giving that talk on Tuesday or Monday, I said, even if it's silent, just wait a bit and eventually you'll hear something. And at that point, you're focusing on your perception of sound and waiting. And then when the sound happens, it comes and goes. So you're not thinking, oh, what kind of bird is that? Is it a grey bird, a red bird, a blue bird? You're just thinking that's the sound of a bird coming and going. So at that point, you're focusing, you're mindful of a perception. And then the third box is something else. It's a question mark. Now, in the original sutra, the word is consciousness, but I replace it with a question mark because consciousness within Buddhist psychology has got quite a specific definition. And it's very difficult to, I find, to sort of translate that into something that captures the essence of that. Certainly being conscious, like Phil or I might say from a kind of medical point of view, just means being awake, like actively participating, being in the room. That's not what it means in Buddhism. So consciousness or something else is really, I define more as, and in fact I probably should put it up here, is the gap between thinking and perception. And you might think, well, it's very odd, what are you talking about? But if you're focusing on your thinking and focusing on your perception, you might begin to notice that there's some sort of gap between these two things. And that's really as much as I can define it, really. You might notice there is an emptiness or some sort of gap between thinking and perception. They are sitting within a space. So it's not a thing in itself, but if you can almost conceptualize thinking as an object, whatever shape or form you want that to be, and perception similarly as an object, then they would be sitting in a space, in a void. So the gap between them is the place in which is a place between thinking and perception. But also, if you were seeing both of them clearly, you would have to be in consciousness, because you wouldn't be your thinking and perception, there'd be some sort of canvas on which they're happening, and that is where you're sitting looking at them. That may sound like complete gibberish, but you'll hopefully you'll begin to notice during your sitting meditation that there is this feeling of, or awareness of, something in mind that is other than perception and thinking, and it's a big empty space. Okay, so we buzzed through all this. So we did prepare, and we said sit up straight, closed our eyes, moved our tongue to the top of our mouth, started breathing, connecting, scanning, back to our breath, natural and soft, aware of our whole body. And then yesterday we looked at our feelings, calmed them down. We thought about all our feelings and who had their hands up. That feelings have intensity and crossover. We talked about joy and happiness, or freedom, and happiness is kind of translated, I guess, into contentment, because, again, for the same reason that I outlined yesterday, when we began, I used the word happiness, and people felt happiness meant happy birthday, or kind of happy, 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 let's all have a dance. And a lot of people saying, I just don't feel very happy at the moment, or I'm doing this in order to be happy. So what do you mean, just make yourself happy? There was a bit of resistance to happiness. But if you remember my glass of water analogy, where we're walking through the desert and we're super thirsty and we see a glass of water and we think, oh, great, glass of water, that's joy. So we have the opportunity for contentment, for satisfaction. Happiness is when we drink the water. So you'll know this feeling because you have been thirsty and had a glass of water and thought, oh, that's exactly what I needed. And that's happiness. So that's not happy birthday. That's a different kind of happiness, the one with balloons and candles. This happiness I'm talking about is the contentment one feels when we have a glass of water and we're very thirsty. My needs have been met. So the gathers yesterday were aware of my feelings, and then alive and freedom. Okay, so I've kind of really talked about this. So mind is just recapping perception, thinking, and consciousness. And I've written a definition here. That's handy. Perception is the manifestation in my mind of a sensory stimulus from my body and the world around me. I made that definition up, but it fits what I'm trying to get across. So it's sensory information, and information is a word. Maybe next week, if I do get around to talking about emptiness and signlessness, information is a word that I'm going to use again and again. But the world is full of information, and that information is being transformed into electric code, maybe, and that code is going into our mind, and our mind is aware of it. Now, key here is they did not originate from inside my mind. So that's really helpful, because, as I say, awareness of mind is difficult to do. Sounds simple, but when you first try it, you think, I don't know, I'm just thinking. So that's not really working. But you can believe in perception. You've definitely done it. And the stimuluses did not originate from inside your mind. And you can believe in that as well. But they are in your mind now because they've been transformed into information, and that information is in your mind. And so thinking is the manifestation of memory or analysis that runs continuously. So it's often described as a stream or a river, and we can be very fooled if we're standing in the river, submerged, sometimes above our heads in the river. We can be fooled into thinking we are thinking. Even the words that we use, like I just accidentally said, we can be think we're thinking. So thinking is such annoying, irritating thing when we're trying to meditate. But here now, we're acknowledging it. As I said to you in the last few days, sometimes thinking can be thought of as a petulant child pulling at your clothing, saying, me, 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 I want your attention. And you kept saying to it, look, I'm going to come to you, but just wait. I'm busy. I'm doing this thing now, but I will get to you. So now we are going to get to it. So it's the manifestation of a memory that's important, or analysis of what's going on at the moment, or a mixture of both, or some kind of analysis of what could be happening in the future. So we're setting up scenarios, similar in a way to remembering scenarios in our memory. So memory and what would we call it? Premonition? I don't know. Thinking about the future are similar in that sense. You imagine scenes from the past or scenes in the future. An analysis is slightly different. Things are good or bad, up or down, black or white, and you're trying to box them. You're trying to make a decision. Which box does this go into? And sometimes our thinking can seem like it's not our own. Now, I'm sure we've all had that experience where we think we're thinking away and we're criticizing ourselves. Oh my God, if only I could stop criticizing myself. I'm giving myself such a hard time. And you can think as if you can believe as if the thinking is coming from someone else. And in, unfortunately, organic illnesses like schizophrenia, people do think that the thinking is coming from someone else. But if you consider it, it seems self-evident that that thinking is coming from yourself. But that narrative voice that's thinking for you can appear sometimes to be someone else's voice, like my mum's voice or my dad or my teacher or my next door neighbor or my lover or whoever it is. And you're talking for them almost, but it's not them. It's nothing to do with them. It's you. And you know that, but it doesn't seem like it sometimes. So that's an interesting thing about thinking. It can sometimes seem as if it's coming from someone else, but it isn't. But all thinking seems as if it originates from within the mind. And again, unless you do have, unfortunately, an organic illness where you think people are inserting thoughts into your head, we're all pretty much of the opinion that our thinking originates from within us and is not being put into us, which is the complete opposite, therefore, of perception. So perception definitely exists when you think about it, or when you focus on it. It definitely exists, but it comes from outside. The information originates from outside. Thinking originates from inside. Still information coming from somewhere, not sure where at the moment, but it originates from inside. So that's the difference. And it's often not related to the present moment. So one of the key things of mindfulness is that you are mindful of, in this case, self and all the different aspects of self, but you can only be mindful of it in the present moment because you can't think about the way you could start remembering the way my leg used to be a year ago. But if you're mindful of your leg, it's your leg right now. It's not your leg in the future or the past. So, but thinking is often memory or premonition or whatever you want to call it, thinking about the future. So it's distracting us from what is really happening. And really awakening, which is kind of what Buddha means, but the process of awakening, enlightening oneself, whatever you want to call it, is about being fully aware of what is happening right now. Because that is the only moment, really. All the moments in the past are finished, and all the moments to come are too complicated to even worry about them. There's so many different options. You're never going to pick the right one. So you should really focus at least 90% of your attention on the present moment. That sounds quite plausible. So why don't we do it? Why are we spending all our time focusing on thinking, past, present, and analysis? Do we believe our judgment is that good? Is our memory so accurate? Is our ability to predict the future been proven to us to be reliable? No. And yet we will not stop doing it. Just like you say to a smoker, the more you do that, the more likely you're going to get lung cancer. And they go, oh, yeah, I know that. And I don't want to have lung cancer and die, but I'll think about it when I'm smoking this fag. So it's just not sensible behavior. And in the same way, what we're trying to do with our mindfulness practice is to focus on what's really happening in this present moment, initially just in ourselves, but the next step, or part two, as it were, is the world around us. But until we understand what's happening in ourselves, there's just no point in engaging with outside, because we don't even know from where we're engaging with the world. So there you go. There's my little rant about thinking and why thinking is not related to the here and now, and why it should be, why our focus should primarily be on the present moment. But having said that and slagged off thinking, there is nothing wrong with thinking. Wrong being the opposite of right, so that's analysis. So there's nothing right or wrong. Just accept that thinking is a third of mind and give it its due, absolutely. Just like we wouldn't say I'm not in my body or I don't have feelings, but it's not the dominant thing. It wants to be like the 5-year-old that's screaming for attention, but it can't be, or it should not be, maybe. And our practice should be about sharing out mindfulness evenly amongst self. Because once you've got self sorted, then you've got to engage with the real world. So you've only got a limited amount of time and energy. So, it can't all be dominated by thinking, much as thinking wants it to be. But there's nothing wrong with thinking. It has its place, and this is the time in the sitting meditation in which to acknowledge thinking. Acknowledge, is it rushing at the moment? Is it so fast that I can't keep up with it? Is it so powerful that it's overwhelming me? Is it dominating anything? Can I do anything to stand back from it? Consciousness, as I said, is a space between perception and thinking. It's limitless in the sense of, if perception and thinking are sitting in an environment, where is the boundary of that environment? There's a difficult question to answer. My argument is there is no boundary. It's limitless. So consciousness is limitless. It's shy, and I like this word because we all know, like, a shy person, we don't give someone a hard time for being shy, and in fact we want to encourage them to come out of themselves and to participate. But we may have been shy in our lives in the past, so we know what it feels like. We identify when we see it in other people, and we don't. Hopefully, our natural reaction is not, "Oh, pull yourself together for God's sake," and have a go at someone who's shy. That's counterproductive. So, if you want them to participate, you need to coax them out. Be patient with them, quiet and soft, and the shy consciousness will manifest itself. So that's why I use that word shy. So with mind, we're asking you to be aware of 3 things at the same time. Now, at the beginning of the talk, I said, although we spin lots of plates at the same time, so we've got 3 plates in front of us. I hope everyone's seen this trick where a magician will get a stick and spin a plate and stick the stick in the middle of the plate, and the plate carries on spinning in the middle. And then he does the second one and the third one, and then he comes back to the first one and spins it a bit more because it's going to wobble and fall off. Then he goes back to the third, then the second, then the third again, back to the first. So it appears that 3 plates are spinning at any one time, but his attention is always on one thing, one thing, one thing. Most of the time, our attention is on thinking, but we're going to try and balance it out so that the plates don't fall off. So my premise at the beginning was you can only be aware of, mindful of one thing at a time. And now I'm contradicting myself and saying, I want you to be aware of 3 things at the same time. So I apologize for contradicting myself, but I do want you to do that now. I want you to somehow hold in your left hand perception and your right hand thinking. And even then to notice that something's happening between your hands. So it's not quite as simple as that, but I'm asking you to see 3 things at the same time. But in the same way as that milking stool is a stool with 3 legs, this is your mind with 3 components. So it's more of an ask. I apologize for that, but it's the only way that I can really get across this concept of mind. And to pretend that our mind is just thinking or just perception or empty, because some people think meditation is about emptying your mind, which doesn't make any sense to me, because I mean, I get dead people have got empty minds, but people who are alive are always thinking. And unless you're in an extremely controlled environment, you'll always have some sort of perception. So you may be ignoring it, but it's happening. So you can't empty your mind. I think what they mean is consciousness is not thinking or perception, but your awareness of consciousness is still one leg of the stool, which is mind. So I want you to see all 3 at the same time. If you find that you're dominated by thinking, then, which most of us are, then maybe, and you're just coming to the practice, or you find within your own practice that I just can't stop thinking, then I would ask you to really focus on perception. Don't worry about consciousness. Asking someone to focus on nothing is difficult. So, but perception is plausible. There's good data to give you evidence that it exists. So focus on perception, because thinking will stay there, thinking away. Perception, if you move your attention to it, you'll probably find perception, and thinking will lessen because you've only got so much awareness. So have a go at that. And as I say, you won't be able to crush thinking down to 0, but you might be able to reduce it a bit and increase perception a bit. And then if you hold both of those concepts in your mind at the same time, or your awareness, sorry, this is where I mix all my words up, I apologize for that. But if you hold in your awareness perception and thinking, you might notice that you're somewhere else, or there's a gap between those 2 things. And that is consciousness, but it's super shy, so don't worry if you can't see it first, second, third, 50th time. I don't think I really felt I understood consciousness until I've been meditating daily for 3 or 4 months. So I sort of pretended, I convinced myself at the beginning, because I wanted to be good at it, that I did know what it meant. But later on, I thought, oh no, I think I get it now. So it's one of those things you just have to be super not committed, but like any shy person, you can't drag them out first thing. You've just got to wait, and eventually they step forward and make themselves known to you. So why have I repeated that phrase, aware of 3 things at the same time? It's in order to drop this massive bombshell. Your mind exists in your feeling, with your feelings and your body at the same time. So now begin to realize at this point in the meditation something even more miraculous, that your mind, as we all said earlier, me is in my chest, and yet we think that my mind is in my brain, but my model of me is bigger than that. I am somehow my body and my mind together, and somehow that's colored by feelings. So I'm all three things at the same time. So if you're able to be aware of the three aspects of mind at the same time, could you also begin to be aware that your mind is a consequence of, or is living in harmony with, your body, and your brain is just part of your body? Your mind wouldn't be in your brain if it wasn't for all the oxygen being delivered and the heart pumping it around and the food that you ate earlier on, and um, the chemicals released from your adrenal glands that make you scared and frightened. They came from the top of your kidneys. So if you didn't have adrenal glands, you wouldn't be feeling scared or angry. So that feeling, where is that coming from? Well, it's all three things at the same time. And our awareness widens out as if we've been focusing with a sniper rifle on body, feelings, and mind. And now we're about to open up the lens, go wide angle, and see that we are these three things at the same time, and that mind is not isolated within brain. Brain is it. No one thinks without a brain. And I can one time I'll tell you a story about someone's brain that fell out of my hands. But obviously, you need a brain to be alive and to think and to have a mind. But it's an essential component. But it is only a component. Mind cannot manifest without feelings and body. And so we zoom out. And having zoomed out and realized that mind is calm, because we've just done the Gatha mind is calm. And earlier we did the Gatha that feelings were calm and body was calm. So all three aspects are calm now. That's enough. That is all that we need. And that is happiness, in the sense of the glass of water being the antidote to thirstiness. That is what we came here to do. And so the final Gatha is, I am meditating, and it shouldn't be I am happy. I apologize. I thought I'd change that. It is I am content. So scrub that out, put content. So the final Gatha is I am meditating, or meditating, content. In that, those three aspects of self are calm. And it's a wonderful feeling. And I'm sure people who've been at the group for a while can identify with that wonderful feeling. And it is very nourishing, very good for you. If you could bottle it and put it in a drink or an energy bar, it would fly off the shelves. So it's worth doing to get that contentment. And even if our feelings weren't great, or our thinking was harsh, or our body was painful, that doesn't matter. We're aware of it, and we've come to be friends with it. We've accepted it, and we tried to calm it down, and that is enough. So you don't need anything else. And that awareness that you don't need anything else, that this is enough, should be fantastic news for you, because all the other stuff you've been worrying about that's been happening on your iPhone or on the news or in your job or whatever, none of that really matters, because I'm okay. I'm all right at the moment. I wasn't, but then I meditated and now I am. So, or at least I'm better. I'm better. We're not trying to get anywhere. People often think meditation or mindfulness practice is about reaching enlightenment, as if you cross a finish line and you're enlightened. But the Buddha didn't become enlightened and then go whoopee and then kill himself because it can't get any better than this. He then lived his life thinking, well, this is great. I should tell everyone else about it. And you can be enlightened. You can be aware, fully aware of the present moment at any time. In fact, there's an argument that people who haven't studied any theory, as it were, behind meditation are the most likely to feel enlightenment, because they have no preconceptions whatsoever as to what it's supposed to be, but they just experience it. So you can't kind of learn it. And then, having brought your awareness out to the whole body, then there's this release, which is basically stop focusing on your breathing and be completely free. Now, I'm going to try to say as little as possible about that, because I don't want to prejudice that, and different people have different experiences, and there's no right or wrong. But it's sometimes described as sitting in awareness. So you're aware of awareness. It might be that you're sitting fully aware of consciousness and everything else is gone. Some people think, well, if I'm not looking at my breathing, what am I looking at? I've got to be looking at something. My advice to you, and this has helped some people, but if that's something you're experiencing, look up away from your breathing, because your breathing must be happening below your ears and your viewpoint tends to be above your ears. Just look up at the horizon. Your eyes are shut, so there is no horizon, but you know what I mean. Look away from your breathing and completely let go of controlling it and just focus on what's in front of you, which is nothing because my eyes are closed. But that might help. That gives you something to look at. When I first started as well, I was reminded of when I used to be a boy and wait for a bus, and I used to see a bus coming down the street, and I would struggle to see the number on the bus. I'd be looking and looking, knowing at some point I'm going to see the information, but I'm not quite sure what it is at the moment. So I'm curious. I'm aware there's something out there, but I'm not quite. It's not come into focus. It will do, but not quite yet. So that's another description maybe of what release is like. But having said that, I don't want to prejudice it, so it could be completely different for you. Lasts for 30 seconds, not very long. And then we just reconnect, which is just coming back to our body, back to the surroundings, and then opening our eyes. And at that point as well, trying to resist the temptation to immediately jump up and do something. Just notice how different. Is it different now to when I started? What's the difference? Is that helpful information? Will that help me for the rest of the day to notice that I was angry or fearful? I thought I was angry, but it turns out I'm scared of something. And is that helpful? What will I do with this information now? Try to ask yourself that rather than think, oh my God, I should be doing something else. Try not to pick up your phone and immediately check for messages. Did anyone text me while I was meditating? Try to think, what did I get out of that? Was it helpful? 9 times out of 10, you'll find it was helpful. Try to maybe promise yourself, I will do this again tomorrow because I really found that helpful. And I promise you I will do it again. You're making that promise to yourself. Or think about your motivation for what you're about to do next. How useful is it to have got the information I just got? And what will I do with it? And then, once you've done 2 or 3 breaths, you can stretch your arms and stand up and do whatever you like after that. And the meditation's kind of fully over, I guess. I don't think there are any other slides. Good. Okay, so I did talk a little bit longer than I normally do, and I do apologize for that. Oh, hello. Very formal, Mrs. P. Durham. Hello. I'm sorry you've just come in right at the end of the final session, so you're very welcome, and it's lovely to have you here. We are going to practice a very short meditation, but unfortunately the talk literally has finished as you've entered the room. Okay, so as I've just finished speaking, can we just unmute our mics just for a sec? And I just throw it out there that is there anything that you learned today that is helpful, or any questions about what I've said? Mind is one of the hardest things to conceptualize, so I'll try and answer any questions.
Just for the others, it's Phoebe, sorry.
Hi, Phoebe.
Oh, Phoebe, hello.
Sorry, should change that.
It's lovely to see you.
I've only just logged on. So
Don't worry. Don't worry. It's lovely to see you, Phoebe, or hear your voice. Is
I
Cliff
hope
well?
everybody's looking after themselves and is okay. Yeah.
We are indeed. So I just returned to my question. Is there anything about what I've said that any questions anyone wants to ask or comments?
I'm struggling
Everyone's looking at their shoes.
I'm struggling to picture consciousness. I still
Yeah,
can't
can't
see
get your head around it.
what it is or how I experience it.
I don't think you can think about it though. I think it's just something you experience. That's what I found.
Yeah,
The more
yeah.
the more that you meditate, it's
Okay. Well, at least it's not just me that's saying that it exists, so that's good. And it is hard, Kim, to really define. I mean, it's really difficult to define. To believe it's there is one of those faith things, like the swimmers. It's a bit like when you learn everyone's doing dog paddle, but someone's doing butterfly up the end of the pool, and you're thinking, how the hell can they do that? So, but it will come, but it's super shy, and because thinking is so dominant and loud, it's not something we've often experienced. But it will come, is all I can really say. So if you're new to the practice, which I think you are, I'm not surprised. And I said I didn't really, hand on heart, feel that I really believed that I'd experienced it for many months. So that's one of the faith and perseverance ones.
Okay.
I muted myself.
Yes.
No, sorry, Ben.
Hello?
Hello?
hello. We can
Sorry,
hear
I
you.
don't know. I just keep it. Hello. My mic just went muted for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, so okay, let's do the meditation for today before we run out of time. Sorry, I'm just opening it on my phone. Sorry. Technology's let me down. I'll just restart the app. It won't be a second. Oh, there we go. Right, we're better. Okay, so we want to do mind. There we are. Okay. Apologies for the delay there. Okay, so I'll just invite the bell. Okay, so we start in the normal way by keeping our eyes still and just looking at one thing in front and taking some big deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. In and out. And with your next out breath, close your eyes. And through your nose, begin breathing in and out. Become aware of the weight of your body on the chair. Your feet are on the ground. Your hands are in your lap. Become aware of the sensations around you. Hear the sounds. Smell the air. Feel the air touching your skin. Bring your awareness back to your breathing. Follow each in-breath, each out-breath. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. Become aware of your mind, thinking, perception. Aware of my mind. Calm my mind. My mind. Calm. Mind. Calm. Mind. Calm. I am meditating. I am content. Meditating. Content. Meditating. Content. Meditating. Content. And bring your awareness back to your body, back to the space around you. Be aware of those different points of contact. Sitting on a chair, feet on the ground. And then, in your own time, gently open your eyes. Bill and Rachel are like traffic lights.
I know. I don't know. Don't know what's happening
I
to
take it,
our
Phil. Have you opened your eyes, Phil?
internet.
Yay! Yeah, Phil's opened his eyes. Excellent.
I was just
Okay,
thinking of the
so
various words that have the word mind in. That just occurred
Yeah.
to me in that thing. But anyway.
right.
Then, can I ask, why
Yeah.
is it called Empty Meadow? If I thought we were kind of going from empty mind, empty meadow, or I was a little confused on that.
On the concept of emptiness. So emptiness is, well, let's start at the end. Meadow is just a reference to the countryside that we live in, that we're in a rural community. So, and I just thought, I mean, you could think of field or paddock or hedge or meadow to me just made me feel like a pleasant place, I guess. So that's why I picked the word meadow. Emptiness, I'm actually going to do a whole talk on emptiness, but I'll roughly explain the concept. So one of the central principles in Buddhism is about emptiness, in that nothing exists purely of itself. Every phenomena in the world has preconditions. So the easiest one to think of probably is self. So you wouldn't be here had your mum and dad not fallen in love, or at least had a relationship many years ago. And so one of the preconditions to being you is your mum and your dad. But they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for your grandma and your granddad, or whatever you called them. So you had 4 grandparents, but they wouldn't be there if it wasn't so. Okay, that goes back and back and back. But how did your mum and dad meet? I mean, I'm not asking you that question, but that you probably know the story. And there were preconditions to them coming together. And so it wasn't just that your mum and your dad were in the same birthing pod and they lived their lives next to each other, and then at a certain time they were released and they mated, that something brought them together, preconditions, and those conditions of themselves had parents and grandparents, if that makes sense, or they had preconditions beyond that. So one of the central principles of Buddhism is that things are emptiness of absolute existence within themselves. And it's an incredibly powerful concept. And actually, the next emptiness is one of the 3 doors of liberation, which are the next 3 steps. So at the end of this, I mean, it's kind of great that you've asked that question, because at the end of sort of part 1, where we've reached today, Friday, we've done all the steps and considered self in its entirety. The next 3 steps are the 3 doors of liberation, and they allow us to look at the world around us and bring our awareness to it. Not ideally to think or analyze it, but just bring our awareness to it. And by bringing our awareness to it in a non-judgmental way, to any particular phenomenon. So I could, for example, do a meditation about you, Kim, and I could think, okay, well, Kim is empty. So Kim must have parents and grandparents, but other preconditions. So you're not entirely there of your own self. The next door of liberation is signlessness, which essentially means I also have preconditions, and some of my preconditions are the same as yours. So, for example, we're both human beings, so I have that in common with you. So I have the same number of chromosomes as you, all the organs in my body are the same as you. So even though I may be your friend or your enemy, we share some preconditions. We both lived in East Sussex. We both speak English. I think you might have brown eyes, so I don't know, but who knows? So there may be similarities between us, as well as differences. And so signlessness makes us remember, or brings our awareness to the fact that we share similarities. There are no absolute boundaries between being Ben and being Kim. It's slightly blurred. And then aimlessness is basically that both me and the object of my meditation, so you in this example, have arrived in this present moment. You exist, I exist, because of previous manifestations, previous preconditions, some of which we share, but we both are here right now. And it's almost like coming into super duper high definition, realizing that we are, me and my object of meditation exist right now. And I have a relationship with it, which is true, shared and true right now. And it will not be the same in the future or the past. It's this way right now, and I've got to deal with it. And sometimes that's a bit harsh, but most of the time it allows us to fully connect to the object of our meditation and to realize exactly what it means to us. It brings it into super high definition. And so the 3 doors of liberation give us insight into that thing I'm meditating about. It might be worth, I wrote a blog post after I did a meditation on the COVID virus. And if you haven't already read it, it might be interesting just to read it, because it explains those 3 concepts, or our relationship to the virus in those 3 concepts. And it's an example maybe of what emptiness means. But just like our body doesn't exist devoid of our feelings and mind, emptiness is the first most primary part of the next steps. But it also exists next to signlessness and aimlessness. They allow you to move the same degree of mindfulness, the same clarity, to an object outside of yourself. So that is why it's called Empty Meadow, because it has preconditions, I guess.
I thought it was an empty mind.
Yeah, it's not. A lot of people think meditation is about emptying your mind or not. It is about not spending all your energy on thinking, but that doesn't make sense to say empty your mind, as if in the traditional sense of the word empty being you have no mind. I mean, how could I have no mind and still be alive? Even when I'm asleep, I have a mind. So even when anesthetists might argue that in deep unconsciousness, you don't have a mind, but there is still energy being used up in your brain. If you stop supplying oxygen to your brain, you'll die very quickly. So even the deepest coma, you still have a mind, whether it's a mind like your prefrontal cortex, your conscious mind is aware of, that's debatable, but those cells still are alive, are receiving nutrients, so they must be doing something. But just like with emptiness, and my definition of emptiness there, and what I was saying about the difference between me being my heart, my hand on my chest, as opposed to my pointing at the top of my head, mind could not be if it weren't for the oxygen delivery and the nutrients and the breakfast you ate earlier on. So that is a precondition of what you're thinking right now. Your shredded wheat or whatever you had for breakfast has been turned into sugar, and that sugar is literally in your mind, making your mind happen right now. So you are what you eat, and you can't not think. You're just really balancing it, and not emptying it. It's not nihilism. I guess if you kind of think about the concept of nihilism, things do not exist. That's not what emptiness means, really. But and you can't have a mind that is blank, in my experience. I guess if you were really good at coaxing consciousness out, you could focus a lot of your awareness on consciousness, which is quite an empty thing, as it were, quite devoid of objects, but it still seems to have a sense of being something. I wouldn't call it the absence of anything, like a vacuum. it's very difficult. Words kind of let you down when concepts get. It's a bit like saying, what does it feel like? Someone might say, how do I know when I'm in love? What does it feel like? Well, you'll know when you're in love. Well, no, but tell me. Write it down. I want you to tell me what it feels like. A bit like this and a bit like that, but it's not really exactly like that. It's one of those sort of concepts, really, I guess. Okay, well, hopefully that's helpful. Remember that mind just sits at the end of the first meditation, the first part of the meditation, but really should be at least practiced from sort of beginning up to mind. And that is self. So meditation on self, working out where am I at the moment, checking in with yourself is really what this meditation is about, and why we practice it together at Empty Meadow. Later, we could bring in those other concepts about thinking about other people, but I'd probably leave it with you that if you're not solid about who you are and where you are at the moment, it's going to be difficult for you to really fully realize where someone else is at, or where another object or area of focus is at. That's a text message going off in the background. I'd really encourage you to check in with yourself every day, ideally. Certainly, if we find ourselves stuck in our own homes with nothing to do, 20 minutes probably won't be that difficult to find. So try to follow a 20-minute meditation. I know Joe's not with us today, but just before I left to go to Australia at Christmas, I dared everyone to do 30 days, meditate 20 minutes every day for 30 days. And she did that and has not stopped meditating. In fact, she's meditating twice a day now, and she has found great benefit from the practice. So I dare you at the end of this course to try to follow the full 20-minute meditation, or I think it's 16 and a half minutes, the soundtrack. It's not that much time. Try to do it once a day for the next 30 days. Make a promise to yourself, and I almost guarantee, as much as I can do, that it will be a really interesting experience, if nothing else. I'm not going to guarantee it's going to change your life, but it certainly changed the path of my life. But it's a very interesting practice to follow. Even if you just do it for 30 days and say, that's enough, I'm never going to do it again. You can always say that you've done it. You probably will really feel comfortable with it by the end of 30 days. And it's one of those things like working out or something like that. First couple of times you do it, you're stiff and it's difficult and you wish you weren't doing it, but you feel like you've got to lose weight or get fit or whatever it is. So you plug away. But if you keep doing it, you start to feel fit, you start to feel better in yourself, and you think, why haven't I done this ages ago? I feel much better. And if you've ever had that experience in your life, meditation can be the same. It's often described in Headspace as going to the gym for your mind, but for the self maybe. And it is very much like that. It's really a very beneficial practice. I'd really recommend it, obviously. Okay, so I'm just going to stop